Good afternoon. I'm Barbara. This is my son Joshua, and this is his story. Just moments before being released from the hospital 18 years ago, our pediatrician came in and said perhaps he heard a murmur, but he wasn't really entirely sure. And he suggested that we just go to an echo, go up the road a bit. And truthfully, I wasn't really worried. And I thought that maybe if I could just stay back at the hospital and get maybe a few more minutes of some new mom tips and so forth would be helpful, and maybe some more shut-eye. But when that hour of waiting turned into 3, I knew that something was wrong. And that's when a lot of nurses came into my room. They sat down on the bed, and one put an arm around me and handed me the phone. And I'll never forget those words. They were very jarring. But it was from my husband, and he said, "Barb, we have a very long road ahead of us." The next time I saw them, he was 48 hours old, and he was on life support. Josh's diagnosis of HLHS was a shock to us, and it was everything that my husband and I were not prepared for. The doctor's words were frightening, incomprehensible to us, and very foreign. And the plan at that point was to move him from New Hampshire and right down to Boston Children's Hospital and to get ready for his first of many surgeries. Now, I know I don't need to go into any details here to spare any of us, but Josh had the Norwood when he was 5 days old. He had the Glen at 5 months old, and he had the Fontan at 20 months old. Our days, weeks, and months were just basically consumed by getting through to the next. But Josh was the beacon of light for my husband and I, and he had an amazing strength and courage, simply amazing. This guy was on a mission to survive. While feeling that we were on a perpetual roller coaster ride, my husband and I could only imagine how our son felt. By the age of 2, he had already had more surgeries than most adults had in a lifetime. Before there were electronic records, we would carry from one appointment to the next stacks and stacks and stacks and files filled with information we still couldn't wrap our heads around. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have laptops, we didn't have digital cameras, no sleep areas, no community pages or social media. That's probably a good thing in a lot of ways. But what we did have here was an entire hospital filled with amazing doctors and surgeons and nurses and staff, soup to nuts, and everybody supported us every step of the way. Those early years flew by, and we found ourselves transitioning into what we called the coasting years. I like that phrase. We tried to normalize Josh's hard beginnings with the usual anticipation of a more healthy early childhood. We had early intervention, and we eased into preschool, and then we kind of threw out our standard growth and development charts. We tried not to panic about germs, and amazingly, we managed to keep him healthy without any additional hospitalizations. And when Josh walked down the hall the first day of kindergarten, it was a good day, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. We were very proud and very grateful to have gotten so far. We had a second child, and we got a little brother, and there he is right there. That's Jason. They had a lot of good times, and everything seemed to be balancing out. Lots of encouragement. He came along to t-ball and soccer. He took part in school play. He jumped rope for heart. He did fundraisers. He did sledding, hiking, biking. He was excellent at swimming, and he loved going fast in the boat. While it all seemed to be very typical kid stuff for everyone else, it was far from it, and it was pretty remarkable. Moving along in time, Josh tried to keep up with everything he enjoyed, but then his stamina started to diminish. We knew that a pacemaker was coming down the road, but we just didn't know when, and it happened a lot sooner than we thought. His heart rate started to plummet at night. We spent a lot of nights on the floor just listening to him, making sure that he was full power, and he was now 8 years old. Now, Josh had very few memories of his prior surgeries, but when he roused from this one at the age of 8, he was more than angry at us, and he had plenty to say. It was entirely different this time. The wounds were not only just physical. He was distraught, and rightfully so. He was old enough now, coming to realize that this was going to be his life, aware of just how fragile he had become, and now he abruptly understood that he was living with literally a half of heart. These realities were difficult to process. Well, Josh did very, very well through middle school and in high school. He continued to develop into an even more kind, sensitive, and compassionate young man. Learning was sometimes difficult for him, but Josh was followed by a terrific support team. His teachers told us that they wished every student had a positive outlook and such a good work ethic as his. Josh couldn't play hockey, but his knowledge and interest was pretty intense, so he earned a place, and he was a co-manager of the hockey team for 4 years. We were very proud to see him make such a commitment, and it brought many, many fun times and a lot of self-confidence with it. It was heartwarming to see him on such a roll. Everything came to a screeching halt just January of last year, 2014. He contracted the flu. It happened very fast. He was very, very sick, and he just couldn't recover. His little heart, actually, half a heart, took a big hit, and it was time for the talk. What we really continually looked over our shoulder for 18 years had finally caught up with us. We all dreaded to hear the reality, and Josh needed a heart transplant. Well, coming back to Boston Children's Hospital, it was pretty surreal for the evaluation. It had been 10 years since his pacemaker, and for everything that had changed, a lot of things had remained the same. And walking through the doors again, the foundation for our strength was not only in Josh's eyes, but also in a familiar face of when we first came here 18 years ago, when it was Dr. Betsy Bloom. We were now in the hands of her transplant team. The evaluation, education, PICC line, Milneurone, etc., the listing, the waiting, it was all very, very hard. We were having a tough time, and we limped through spring and summer. It was the hardest on Josh, but he stayed so courageous and strong through it all. When the phone rang, my husband fell to his knees. I knew it was the call, and so it happened. We are grateful to say that since his transplant 8 months ago, Josh has made progress in leaps and bounds. He is now running a mile on Saturdays and has found a passion in rowing. He has discovered a new stamina like he's never known before, and he's already planning hiking trips with his cousins up the mountain. His thoughts are clearer, he's more energetic and motivated, and he has a really sharp wit. To top it all, he will be graduating high school in the spring with his classmates. He's had quite the journey. We are filled with enormous gratitude, awareness, and a new hope for the future. And as we gathered for Thanksgiving last year, Josh summed it up perfectly. We all gave thanks, and when it came to his turn, he said, and I quote, "I am thankful for my new heart, and I am thankful to give it a very good home." There is an overwhelming sense of responsibility that has come with receiving the ultimate gift of a new beginning. It greets us every morning and quietly sits upon our shoulders for the rest of the day, and sometimes gently nudges us in the wee hours of the night. Our responsibility is to honor and appreciate the generosity of the organ donor and of the donor's family. Their gift of life is now a part of our family, and we will always remember them, and they will always be cherished and will always be loved. We can promise you that. For all of you here, and for so many more that couldn't make this event, we say thank you. We thank you for your care, your compassion, and your never-ending commitment to see us through the past 18 years. For every conversation, for every explanation, for every fear soothed, and for every breath and tear caught, our family thanks you. It takes a remarkable person, it takes a remarkable team to care for patients like Josh and for parents like us. Boston Children's Hospital is truly remarkable. Thank you very much.